Welcome, friends and comrades. We're live.
Hello there.
Grant's already sparking up. I would have, honestly, but I did not have time to go to the dispensary today because I rushed home. So, this one in
Oh,
my honor. I know,
I'd
painful.
like to pretend that I'm also like in that same predicament, but that's a big fat hairy lie. I've been vaping for the past hour and a half. I'll have you know.
Yeah, no, it's a good way to talk about this because this is some heavy stuff. Heavy stuff. I got to pay attention to
Yeah,
super chats today too because I've been blowing them off the last few streams. I apologize. I get really into the subject matter and I forget that you people are so generous. So for instance, Ben Holden, thank you for the $1.99 so that you could bitch at me for being late.
yeah.
Duly noted. Duly noted. So welcome, Grant. So you are new in your foray into the world of Turtleboy lore, right?
I'd suppose maybe a few months. Not new into the lore of your channel, having watched every Chili DeCastro hearing ever, but somewhat new into Turtle Boy lore, I suppose.
Did you see that actually Chili DeCastro he put up a community post on his channel purporting to be raising bail for Aiden, who does not have a bail. His bail was revoked.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be just like that time he tried to help the woman on the Native American reservation, and that didn't work out
Oh,
very well for either.
Deborah.
Oh, she spoke to moths. I think wasn't that Deborah?
Butterflies.
Sorry, yes, the butterflies.
Butterflies, yeah.
Right.
I think Deborah ended up in jail, didn't she?
They thirsted her, I believe.
Yeah, they thirsted
part
her
of what
in jail.
happened. Yeah.
I do want to thank them both because I learned all about how the Native American court system works. But anyway, too much about Chili. Sorry, I had to go there.
No worries.
It's hard because I'm looking forward to the intersection between Turtleboy and Chili. Now, if we back up to when I was feuding with Chili, Turtleboy jumped on that because he saw an opportunity. Didn't work out that well for them. Case dismissed. Thank you very much. I should knock on wood because that son of a bitch is probably going to sue me in all of the states before we're done. But I don't consider it legitimate. So that's how I'm going to treat it. Right. Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to talk. So guys, a lot has happened since December 26th, 2020. I'm sorry, 22nd, really, 2023.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, 2023. So December 22nd, 2023, Aiden is arraigned in the Superior Court on 16 indictments, right? 8 felony witness intimidation charges, 5 picketing and parading charges, juror, witness, or judge, because he went to their homes. And then he has 3 conspiracy charges because he conned a civilian dispatcher into running running license plates using the CJIS system, which is a big no-no, right? So he gets arraigned. Were you at that arraignment, Grant?
I think that was in the Superior Court, and right. Yes, I was there.
Okay, so I'm not going to play it right now. I guess I don't know if it's worth it. What does the chat think? Should we play his Superior Court arraignment? I know that Artie's Corporate Fiction did it last night. And Artie, if you're in the chat, let me know and I'll slide you a link. You're welcome to come up too. Artie's a great guy. And I was trying to catch him up on this whole Karen Reed situation, Turtleboy situation, because they're so intertwined at this point, right? So I don't know. He watched it. I thought it was pretty... he got arraigned. He pled not guilty. There was some controversy over bail conditions. I know that they took that as a win. I didn't interpret it as a win so much as Ken Mello trying to be overly reasonable and kind of misjudging the defendant that he's dealing with. What was your take?
Oh, I would say similar read to you, but I'd sum it up in one sentence, which is what happened was Mr. Kearney's charges got elevated from the district court to the Superior Court by way of an indictment. And as a result, Massachusetts law has this weird quirk where the bail conditions you can set on district court charges are a little bit more permissive than the bail conditions a Superior Court judge can set. And that's basically the whole crux of that Friday hearing. Now, it led to a headline in the Boston Herald, "The Turtle comes out of his shell." But as we quickly learned, nobody came out of any shell, and the shell quickly broke in half, came crashing down, or whatever other metaphor you want to use.
Right. So like pretty much what happened was there were no contact orders that were put in place on the district court level, so that he could not contact or go near any of the 8 named witnesses or victims at this point. They're not just witnesses, they're victims now. The 8 named victims in his case, right? So he can't contact them, which is boilerplate, that's to be expected if there's a crime and there's a victim. I mean, you'll see it in robberies, you'll see it in shoplifting. They want you to stay away from the store, which would be the victim. Like it's pretty commonplace that if you commit a crime and there's a victim, the court's going to order you to stay away. So they have these stay away orders put in place at the district court level on a PR. So he didn't have to pay any money to get out of jail. He was arrested, so he wasn't really in jail. But, he got out of custody, personal recognizance, promise to appear, stay away from your victims. Very normal stuff. He's got no criminal record, to be expected. Aiden, in his eternal quest to continue to harass, intimidate, and terrorize these people, was like, nay. I need to still be able to harass them. This is unacceptable. So they take it up to the Superior Court on a bail review, and Judge Krupp slaps him down and says, there's probable cause for these offenses. You are not a journalist. This is outrageous, and these bail conditions are going to stay. So then he's arraigned in front of Judge Krupp again at the superior level. And unfortunately, because Ken Mello, who's the special prosecutor, did not ask for any bail, they could not impose these charges above Aiden's objection. So it wasn't that the court necessarily said, and I believe actually at one point the court said, I find that in this case, those conditions would be appropriate, but I'm hamstrung. There's nothing I can do. So it wasn't like this big win, but whatever. They treated it as such. He's on a high. So he leaves court that day and he starts communicating with the victim in his domestic violence case now. And she and I are in contact, which everybody knows about at this point. There's a lot of conspiracy theories swirling around that. And I'm remiss to release a lot of my communications with her because they're personal, and I consider her a friend at this point. I think of her very highly. I think she's a very smart woman. She's funny and engaging and intelligent, and she's a good mom. Brave. Her children are wonderful. Yeah, I love her kids, especially one of her sons.
She's very brave.
She's very brave, very brave.
Very much so.
So I don't know what I'll do with that. But what I can say is that this conspiracy theory that this is some sort of plot to get this guy arrested could not be further from the truth. And in the course of the, week, maybe 2 that I had been speaking to her before this incident, I knew through what she was telling me that Aiden was pushing to see her in person, right? He was texting and calling her nonstop, and he wanted to see her in person. And because of her medical condition at the time, I would repeatedly tell her, like, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I understand toxic relationships more than most people. I understand that drive to reconcile fault, but I would really suggest that you not meet him in person, or if you do cave, bring someone with you. Don't go alone, because I was genuinely concerned that to solve the problem of having a girlfriend in that condition and a wife that doesn't know, that he would harm her in some way to take care of the problem. And I have texts to back this up. And she was trying to keep that resolve, right? And then unfortunately, she gets this subpoena for a very real grand jury. I don't know why they keep saying it's fake. It's not. And she panicked and was very worried that Aiden was going to retaliate against her. Because I think what people are not realizing is that if you testify in front of a grand jury and those indictments return, at some point the defendant in that case is going to have access to the minutes in that grand jury, and they're going to be able to see who testified. And that was her concern, was that he's going to find out that I've been subpoenaed and that I've testified, but I have to comply with the subpoena. I don't want to be arrested. So as I understand it, she had sent him a picture of the subpoena as a way to try to appease him and explain to him, look, they're forcing me to do this. I'm not doing this voluntarily, right? And unfortunately, in her doing that, trying to protect herself and insulate herself from his retaliation, it actually caused this issue. But I want to be very clear. No one made Aiden go over to this woman's house, this state witness's house, this abuse victim's house, mere hours after he was arraigned at the superior court level. Nobody put a gun to his head and made him do that. As I understand, because I was just listening to Howie Carr, and his lawyer has said yet again, because he's also said it in open court, he advised his client, not to go to her house. So he went to her house above his attorney's objection and against his advice to intimidate this woman and ultimately assault her. And I think that there's been a lot of chatter about the severity of the assault because she was not grievously injured, and she never claimed to be. But it was unwanted, unlawful contact. And per the law, that's an assault, right? Am I wrong?
Well, with my traditional caveat that I'm not a lawyer, I'm not your lawyer, and you should get a lawyer. It's especially, I don't know if folks understand this, but it's not just A and B that he was charged with. It's domestic A and B, which is a special kind of assault and battery in the context of an intimate partner or household or family relationship. And you don't have to like take a shod foot and make them bleed from the head to commit a domestic A and B. In fact, just so folks understand, the concept of assault does not even involve you being touched, right? So you can commit the crime of assault because you induce that in someone, the fear of being hurt. Assault and battery is when you actually commit physical contact. And it doesn't matter. I mean, maybe the severity could bump it up to something way more serious if you like kill them or really hurt them. But just pushing someone over a couch, you've battered them. It doesn't matter whether they, pass out or die from it. You battered them.
And I think the context surrounding the incident was what concerned me and disgusted me the most, honestly, is that it wasn't just and again, like, Aiden is someone who historically, without getting into details about yet another pending case, if someone walks into him in public, he's down to the police station filing an assault. Literally walks into him, right? And it's the worst thing in the world, right? And we know this, right? So shoving someone is definitely more deliberative in action than walking into them, first and foremost. And it was the fact that he had gone over there to essentially threaten and pressure her out of complying with the subpoena. He wanted to hire her an attorney that would deal with his interests above hers, which is completely inappropriate. And, is kind of, again, boilerplate witness intimidation. He threatened her with sensitive information about her children if she complied. He threatened her with nude photos if she complied. Like, that's a problem. That's that power and control dynamic that we see in abuse. It doesn't need to be physical. And then because she had taken, so essentially in the course of this, he forces, I wouldn't say force, he coerces her, he pressures her into going through messages. And I think mainly what he wanted to see was what she was talking about with me. And he knows just from those messages, because he went through all of them, that at no point did we ever plot to get him arrested or anything like that. My main concern with her was supporting her through this horrible social media onslaught that she felt was coming because she wanted to break up with him. And I wanted to help her extract herself from that relationship in a way that was safe and comfortable, while also protecting herself. And as she testified in the course of our conversations about this, she started telling me things that I felt would be information that I couldn't do much about, but the police could. So I did connect her with the police voluntarily. Without any direction. I am not an agent of the state. They are not paying me, or they are not directing me. They are not giving me suggestions even. I have been investigating this whole mess with Karen Reed because I hate Aiden, partially, and because I think Karen Reed is a terrible person that's doing something terrible. So I have a vested interest in this. Sometimes I make content about it. Other times when I get information, I feel like it would be best served going to the authorities and not YouTube, right? And so that's what I've been doing. And that's what happened with this victim, right? So he knows this, though, because he's seen the messages. And I'm sure that he has seen ad nauseum how I shit on him constantly because he's a weird jerk-off goblin with a tiny red dick. And I think she could do better. I know she could do better. And then I was really encouraging her to stay away from him, block his number, block his social media, don't call him, don't answer his calls, don't see him in person, right? That's the opposite of trying to lure him to someone's home. I'm telling her, and she's agreeing with me, stay the fuck away from him. But these things are complicated. They're tough. They're tough, right? And there's a lot of, as we've seen with Aiden and the women, right? Because there's a lot of them. I call them the Manson chicks now. There's a lot of coercive control involved.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
They all have that 1,000-yard stare. It's very bizarre. It's very, very off-putting.
Well, what struck me was obviously trying to parse all this out between December 26th, when he was first brought up on the bond violation for this these DV charges, as well as arraigned on them. Between then and the RO hearing on Monday, the thing my brain kept focusing on was, why does he keep saying that the victim stole his notepad? And then we get into court and the victim testifies that it was her damn notepad that he was writing on.
Yep.
So so for her to put her paper, right, that was on part of her notepad, that's her property, in her shirt, fully within her remit, in her own home, to do that, and then to be confronted in a manner that was, I think what that is kind of expressive of is like the culmination of what you were talking about, this coercive control, abusive relationship. It can culminate in these moments where the mask comes off, and then you get things that maybe don't result in a punch, but they certainly are indicative of a very dangerous situation, which is, just from a personal perspective, why I'm very glad that you and whoever else out there, and God or whatnot, kept the victim's safety and well-being in mind, because when she got into court, it did appear that her command of the facts and her understanding of what had happened and her self-control was reflective of someone who felt safe. And that, to me, was the most important part of that whole 209A restraining order hearing.
Which, what a circus that was. You know, I understand that to a certain extent. These judges have to be careful, obviously, because of the risk of appeals. They want to, you know, really allow everything and have everything hashed out so that if they do appeal it, you know, it's bulletproof, their ruling, which I believe that it was. And I understand that there's a certain amount of scrutiny with the cameras and the media and the, you know, 25 or so turtle tards that showed up with their, you know, sign. Well, they didn't have signs this time, but, you know, there's scrutiny on it. So I understand. I was disturbed to see that this was essentially an 8-hour hearing. For these things are usually 15 minutes to maybe 45 if it's particularly convoluted. And this went all day. And I mean, you were there, Grant. I wasn't. I read your tweets and I really appreciate that you were live tweeting. I wanted to be there, but I'm not going to risk myself, right? Because I won't be good to anyone. And, you know, this woman is not the only woman that Aiden has manipulated and weaponized at this point, and I need to be mindful of that. But, you know, I was very concerned to see the line of questioning that Bradel continually led Aiden down. Some of it was obviously very incriminating towards Aiden, you know, that I don't know what he was thinking. Some of it was just designed, in my opinion, to humiliate and degrade the victim.
A very poor move by Mr. Bradel, because the part of the testimony that came out, I don't know if it was I think it was oral testimony relayed to the victim on direct, was that Mr. Bradel was brought up. It was actually a written text message that Bradel had to read, and now I remember it because he referred to himself as Timon, the third person. Kearney sent a message to the victim saying something along the lines of, if you don't go along with this, I will have Mr. Bradel or Tim or something, like, bring up horrible stuff about you on the stand and smear you. And it's very interesting to me, just as a lay opinion, because Massachusetts hasn't adopted ABA Model Rule 8.4G, which is a very interesting standard in the context of legal ethics. We have our own version of the rule that was adopted in 2012, and I think then certified by the SJC after that. That's much narrower in scope. But even the rule we have in Massachusetts in the context of these ethics rules, as overseen by the Board of Bar Overseers, really prohibits people from engaging in behavior that borders on, like, sexual harassment or things like that. And what I really did not think was appropriate was the multiple instances of Bradel weaponizing the victim's sexual conduct. And I get where this comes from, because if you think about, like, a sexual assault trial, and this is going to sound grotesque, and I don't write the rules, it's just how it is. But if you look at the federal rules of evidence in the context of sexual assault trials, you'll see that you actually can weaponize, in certain contexts, the victim's sexual character traits. So I somewhat understand why Bradel's mind went there, but the way that he did it was just so grotesque to me that, I mean, this man, I don't know if, like his reputation matters to him, but he certainly lost a lot of reputation in the eyes of the judge, which may date back to that video that was introduced at that bond violation hearing. But he lost even more credibility when he proffered to the judge that a witness was going to say something, who then got called on Zoom, and we didn't even talk about this yet, completely melted down and in essence sandbagged Bradle's entire argument.
Right, and that's down the line. So I mean, that was another thing that was interesting and questionable that happened. So shortly, and I don't know, I can't figure out with Aiden's attorney if he's lazy and incompetent or if this is some sort of strategic move that he makes. But Friday, late in the day, these subpoenas come out, right, for this restraining order hearing that's happening on Monday. So Friday, these subpoenas come out to Grace Bennett and then to the victim, right? And, you know, Grace Bennett, the witness, is freaking out, going, I told the investigator I didn't want to talk to him. I'm not going to, like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this, right? And I thought it was interesting because I feel like there were some notice and opportunity to be heard issues that could have been brought up with that, because she didn't even have time to get representation if she was, you know, so inclined, really. You know, if you're getting a subpoena at 3:00 in the afternoon on Friday for a hearing on Monday, and you can't say that there were time constraints on the defendant, Aiden and Bradle's part, because they had 10 days, you know? And that's the other thing that I just heard Bradle say too, that's just inaccurate, that, you know, the morning before before his arraignment, she goes in to get this order and it was some sort of strategic plan. No. She got an emergency order the morning of this incident. And they could not serve Aiden because he was a fugitive. So he had called the Holden police on Saturday, which would have been Christmas Eve, and said, hey, is there a bolo out for me? Right? Which again, like chronologically, you're arraigned in Superior Court. You're let out on your own PR. Great. You do a little victory lap. You go over to a state witness's house who's also your girlfriend. You intimidate her. You assault her, allegedly. And then you take off, right, and leave. The police are contacted. A bolo's put out. It goes out on Twitter. Aiden is made aware of this. He then calls the police on his goddamn self and goes, hey, is there a bolo out for me? And they're like, yeah, there is. And he goes, oh, yeah. I'll turn myself in. I'll be there in an hour, right? And so the Holden police are like, great, makes our job easier because they're going to arrest him and they're going to serve him with this emergency order. And then he just doesn't show up. So he goes on the run, right, for 3 days between Saturday and Tuesday, right? And, you know, to make matters worse, in a later tweet from jail, because he's telling people what to write, he refers to himself as having to be a fugitive on Christmas, right, which he is alleging harmed his children. I am of the opinion they probably had a great Christmas because that fucktard wasn't around, but whatever. You know, so now you are admitting in text from jail that you were a fugitive from justice for 3 days. Like, what kind of argument are you going to make about bail, right? So then finally turns himself in on Tuesday. That's why the order, because it had expired on Tuesday. It was an emergency order until the next court date. So she was there because the courts were open. That's the only reason that happened. It wasn't some sort of strategic move to fuck the guy over. It was simply like, you had a restraining order that was active. You dodged service. She's got to go back and extend it. That's it. Hold on. If you have any thoughts on that, I just got to grab a laptop charger. So I'll be right back.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, he just had to make sure that he was a flight risk before finally, you know, turning himself in. Like, yeah, I'm aware that there's this bolo with PC, but I'm just going to not deal with it. I'll tell the cops I'm coming in, do a no-show before facing the music. Like, that's a brilliant strategy there. All right. That's got to help your possible bail.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, maybe people don't think about the intricacies of flight as they're doing it, but generally you don't want to, you know, I'm talking as a lay opinion here. Generally, you don't want to express intent of fleeing. It's just not, like, forget about the instant case at bar. Like, it's something that constantly will come up whenever you're before a court, because the state will say, this person is clearly someone who, when presented with an order of the court, would be willing to flee. So it's just tactically, and this was not the only tactical misstep. And that's it's something else I want to talk about, although I think it comes later in this discussion. There are things that have been occurring in the context of this case, both at the bail hearing and at the RO hearing, that aren't just tactical missteps. They had to have had some double layered meaning, because they didn't have any, not only did they have no tactical or strategic benefit in the context of the cases in which they were occurring, the bond violation or the RO hearing, but they were so detrimental to the interest of not only the defendant, but Mr. Bradel, that there has to be, in my mind, sheer incompetence. The Occam's razors thinking about this doesn't make sense, because it was so out of the norm.
Well, that's what I mean. I've said it before. I feel like it was a master class in what not to do after you've been arraigned in Superior Court, like just from start to finish. And like, this is my disclaimer. As one of the bad kids and a lifelong questionable individual, I am not advocating for anyone to run from the police at any point, because they will catch you 9 times out of 10. But if you're going to do it, don't fucking call them. Don't let them know that you know. It's a lot different argument when you get to court on Tuesday, right? The next court date, to say, oh, gee, I didn't know there was a bolo out for me. My bad, right? That's forgivable. But when there's a recorded call to the police station where you acknowledge that you know about it and then promise to turn yourself in, how are you going to say you're not a flight risk? And then you follow it up later on with these jailhouse tweets calling yourself a fugitive and blaming the victim for your fugitive status. Like, how do you think that's going to translate when you go to ask for bail?
Oh, I could take it one step further. They could, the state could, let's talk hypotheticals. Hypothetically, in a case with very similar fact pattern, the state could have evidence of someone drive their GPS data during the time they were supposed to be turning themselves into the police, driving across state lines. That still doesn't prove you were fleeing, if you can say, oh, I was going to get beer in New Hampshire or fireworks or whatever. But if you say I was a fugitive, then none of that matters, because you've already said it. So I don't know, that part is, to me, just so confounding, especially when you have a lawyer and ostensibly not only PR knowledge, but a PR team around you. These are very rookie mistakes that don't make sense in the fact pattern.
It's also not the first time he's done that as well. I mean, it's like you said, it's one thing to do something criminal. You know what you're doing is criminal. However, when you admit it, you show intent. You say the hardest thing to prove out loud. You're handing it to them, right? When he was doing some of his famous witness intimidation video, greatest hits, he would say flat out, I know I'm terrorizing you. This will all stop if you ABC, right? You're showing intent. You're tipping your hat. You're saying out loud the hardest thing to prove in court, which is your intent, which is what is in your skull. You are telling them that. So I wasn't as shocked and surprised when I saw him pull these stunts off, if I hadn't witnessed that prior. But it is on another level of lunacy. It's cartoonish, man. He's just completely morphing into a cartoon.
Is this drugs? Is it just mental illness? Is he just that stupid? Like, I've always regarded him as someone who has average intelligence, right? Just like me, right? Like, he's college educated. He puts his pants on in the morning somehow, but like these moves, I'm just like confounded. What is going on with this man? Just tremendously terrible decisions, from A to B, right? And that's another thing that people are like, oh, he's completely innocent. This is fabricated. That's a setup. Why did he run from the police? Why did he throw his phone? He claims to have thrown the phone in a river. I am of the opinion that he probably has hidden it with someone, but regardless, he showed up to court with no phone. For the first time in his life, he did not have his phone on him. And he later made statements, well, I don't have it. I threw it into a river. Are these the actions of an innocent man?
Right. Yeah. You're gonna smash your phones with hammers and like, come on, dude.
Right. I see people asking some questions too, that this keeps coming up, and this is actually and again, I'm not speaking for the victim. I'm not her. She's in a position right now to where it's in her best interest to just not engage with this at all, because this man has terrorized her and her children for a month before all of this happened. And, I think it's appalling that he's still testing the lines of the restraining order. He claims to want to be free and done with her, but then he invokes her name and posts her picture. That does not, to me, seem like someone who is done right? Like that's just common sense. If this person's so bad, Aiden, just leave her alone, right? Move on with your fucking life. But he can't do that. But I see a lot of people asking, why did she call Tully and not 911? Right. Okay. So she's got 4 kids at home, and with a lot of domestic violence victims, it is difficult to call the police, period. 911, all that. You're going to have police in your house. It's going to disrupt your children. There's ramifications that can come of that with like 51As being filed, particularly around domestics. It's embarrassing. It's scary. My understanding is that she called actually Mello, and I think she testified to this, correct?
Yeah, right. She testified that Ken Mello connected her with the police officers that she initially called.
So she had called Ken Mello because she did not know who else to call, because with the grand jury issue, that's who she had been in contact with, right? And another thing that I've said several times, because it's the truth, is that she didn't fully realize when she was reporting this that she was reporting an assault. She was really trying to report the threats and the intimidation. She was very fearful for what he was going to post and say about her children, what kind of information he was going to release, whether or not her intimate photos and videos were going to get out, because as Aiden testified in court, that's what he does. He's admitted it now, so we can kill that issue. Fully uncensored, unedited, nude videos of his ex-girlfriends to either exact revenge on them or try to keep them in line, right? That is what he does. He's admitted to it. It's no longer disputable, right? So she's worried about all that. And that's why she reported it. I had talked to her after she had talked to Mello, so like the following morning. And it was Mello who then, I believe, connected to Tully, because that's the officer that he's dealing with. We have to remember he's a defense attorney. He's not a prosecutor. So this is like a first time thing for him. So Tully then connects with her and says, well, this is not something within my purview, my jurisdiction. You need to report it to the police. And then at that point, she was connected to her local police. So essentially what we have here is not like a giant conspiracy, like all these mush brains are purporting. It's simply this woman called someone of, with authority that she had already been connected to try to get some help with this. He referred her to a law enforcement officer who then referred her to the correct agency. And that's it.
Right. And if folks, I mean, I'm not sure. And I understand that most folks are not just involved with grand jury proceedings and state government and law enforcement officials. This is not something that just happens routinely. But if you're involved in that world, you're exposed to these structures of government that are they're not decipherable. For example, I think, Kate, you mentioned, and you said you had said it before, the victim didn't realize she was a victim of X, Y, or Z crime. Most people are not going through life thinking, oh, okay, so MGL, 268.13b 2b3 says X, Y, and Z, and the mens rea and actus reus just occurred. I better call the police and tell them to do X, Y, and Z. That's not how most human beings think. They think something terrifying has happened. Who can help me? It's almost like an instinctive reaction. You're not looking for a parent figure. You're looking for a authority figure.
Right.
That's what happens.
Right. And I don't find it to be, I mean, I'm kind of confused as to how people are then compounding that into some sort of conspiracy, because at the end of the day, it was not Ken Mello or Brian Tully or Michael Proctor or, Nick Garano or any of these people that they're obsessed with and think that is, there are these dirty cops. They didn't charge Aiden Carney with this crime. The Medfield police did. Right. The Medfield police were the ones that detained the private investigator that was sent to her home the morning of court to try to pressure her to recant her testimony. That's who charged. That's who did the charging. That's who did the detainment. It wasn't any of these people that they think are, caught up in this whole conspiracy. Like, so, I mean, again, if this was a bogus charge, then you would think that, the agency that handled it, being the Medfield police, would have picked up on that. But her story is consistent. It rings true. And, the only person, I just want to point this out too, I'll be very open about this. I have both versions of the recording that was played at the arraignment, right? Yes, it was sent to 27 people. Some of those 27 people subsequently sent it to me. It was unlisted on his YouTube channel. It was set to private, then it was unlisted. Now it's back to private, but I downloaded it. I have it in my possession, and it was edited, right? So the only person that has lied as far as this court case goes, because that's when the clock starts, right? When you get in front of the judge, between the victim and Aiden and Bradel, right? The only person who's actually lied to the court at this point, demonstratively, provably, would be Aiden, and as a byproduct, his attorney, right? He proffered that. He said that it was true and authentic, and it's not. I've seen the video. I have it in my possession. There's actually video at the start of it. You can see the phone is aimed down at her floor in her apartment as he's putting the phone in his pocket. He does not say he's recording. He says, well, I've got to go. And then she responds, I know. Right. And the editing job was so poorly done that I am skeptical. Right. I am skeptical that Bradel did not recognize it.
Yeah, I mean, you could hear it, and then if you put it through a digital audio workstation, you can see the waveforms not lining up, like the wave is broken. It's visually evident. But I mean, if you have 5 brain cells, you can tell by listening to, especially when you have the 2 different copies. It's beyond undeniable. But even so, you know, you can't tell me that doesn't even sound edited. The edited version, it's so obvious.
It's very poorly done. Very poorly done.
But the proof is there, and I've heard it. It is damning.
Well, and there are implications to that, of course, because this isn't just introducing manipulated evidence into court. It is central to the fact that consent is required to take surreptitious well, you can't take a consensual surreptitious recording. So that's the point. You must have consent to both parties. And no, what's wild is knowingly editing in the consent demonstrates that you knew you broke the law by not having consent. So that in and of itself is just this crazy.
There's the pattern of self-narking. That's what it is. There's the pattern again. You just can't help but tattle on himself and anybody who has ever trusted him with anything in their life.
And that's another part of this that's so confounding, and yet another profoundly poor decision that this man makes, that I'm trying to put myself in that position and understand his thought process. And like, I do some dumb shit. I've done some very questionable things in my life. So I don't want to take away from that or sit up on a pedestal. Like I do, but I simply cannot fathom why you would I guess I can understand why he was recording her, right? Because he wanted to set up, you can hear in the recording that he released, he says, are you going to say that I hit you? Right. So like, I think at this point he knows that he fucked up in pushing her, and he wants to try to set something up to absolve himself of any responsibility or introduce some doubt. Right. So like, I understand why he recorded it without her knowledge. I get that. I don't understand why he then decided to send that original recording to 27 fucking people and put it on his YouTube channel. Like, you know, I have the link. I put it on Twitter today. It's private, so you're not going to be able to hear what's on the video, but it still exists. And Laura, over in the UK, if you delete that, like, we already fucking know it's there, so you can get some too, I guess. Like, you know.
You know what I thought was...
I know Laura feels insulated because she's in the UK, so she feels like she can fuck around with our laws and not have a lot of accountability or consequences for that. Maybe they can't come get you, but we know where you work with children. Just saying. It would be really awkward if they heard about your fucking criminal activity, Laura, right? Just saying. All right. That's as close to Aiden's fucking games as I'm going to get today. But it makes me mad. The women involved with defaming, smearing, and victimizing this woman again, it really bothers me, you fucking gender traitors. You know, it really bothers me.
That is not the direction I was going to go, but I fully support your sentiments if that is how you feel. And that is an important part of this, but it ties into exactly where I was going, which is, Kate, I'm sure you're familiar with the timeline and all this, which is on that Monday. What was it? December 25th, 2023. Right. As you were mentioning, there was this video or the uploaded to YouTube that initially was using the victim's name, and then it changed to not about the victim's name. Now, it didn't go up until 11 p.m. Eastern that day. How do I know? Well, because I woke up at 2 a.m. and I recorded it and then saved a copy of it, because I was like, oh, this is a terrible life decision to have uploaded this. But what was more interesting to me is between 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. on December the 25th of 2023, there was an individual on Twitter, Mike Crawford, who goes by the Young Jerks. It's not multiple people, it's just one guy, Mike Crawford. He was posting smears about the victim, calling the victim a victim in quotes and talking about the audio. So
Yes.
immediately in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, did all those people between 5 and 11 p.m. have access to a copy of the video that was maybe different than what went up at 11? And then from there, what are the implications of all of those people who have knowingly assisted this admitted fugitive from justice in apparently engaging in this last-ditch effort to further stop his victim from showing up at court, apparently? So that to me, just the fact that people are willing to get involved in this, I don't know if it's cultish. So I've been thinking about this a lot. You've been talking a little bit about why do people enable this man or people like him? And I don't think it's a cult. It is in some sense, but I think it's closer to a cult of, it's closer to a cult of personality. And it kind of reminds me of Trump, because I see a lot of this like reactionary deference to the ideological figure, the figure that's kind of built up in the minds of a lot of these fans. So it doesn't matter what the Messiah figure does, there's always going to be a defense. And likewise, it doesn't matter what the opposition does, it's always going to be critical first. The problem is that is an ideologically vacuous position that does not have any effect in the real world. And when the system comes for you, if you're engaging in that behavior, it's going to treat you like an extremist and crush you. And that's what's happening.
Well, it needs to. It needs to. You know, I am of the opinion that Mike Crawford was absolutely aware of what was going on from start to finish. I am of the opinion that Mike Crawford was one of the 27 people that received this video link of this original video, this this recording that was taken without the victim's consent, without her knowledge, and was later altered to then be submitted to court. I believe that Mike Crawford had a part in that. I believe that's why Mike Crawford freaked out and then refused to go live. That's honestly what I believe. I know that Mike Crawford had indicated to some people that he may have to talk to the police about his involvement. I don't know if he followed through with that because I'm not privy to this information. He really should, because at some point they're going to get your name anyway. For all we know, they're watching right now. And now I've said, at least 4 times, Mike Crawford, Mike Crawford, Mike Crawford. I know that you were involved, right? Because people talk. That's the other thing that I don't think people are understanding about this turtle cult. Why am I able to cull all of this information so quickly? Why do I have names and dates and screenshots and videos? It's because people within this criminal enterprise, whatever you want to call it, are getting nervous and uncomfortable. And the only names they have is Kate Peter. Where do you go if you're upset with Aiden, if you're scared of Aiden? Who's the one person who's not scared of him? It's me.
They squawk when they're scared. That is exactly what it is.
Right. So this information is being freely passed around, and I have names, dates, information all the time. Right. And I don't pull any punches. If I get information in the course of me producing content, and investigating this, that I feel like would be better served to go to the police, that's where it's going, including names, including dates, everything that comes around. I have in my possession right now 3 wiretapped communications that Aiden recorded, and you'll never see them on my channel, right? But trust and believe they went to where they need to go because it's a crime.
It does give off stupid mafia. Oh, sorry. It does give off stupid mafia vibes, does it? Doesn't it? And I don't mean that the mafia is stupid, because look, the mafia would look at these people and be like, "You are disgracing the concept of having some kind of structured secret organization, you morons." That's kind of how I would think. Like, how did you think you were going to organize a cover up? You all couldn't organize a fucking bowling night. Pardon my French.
No, not at all. I was just going to mention that I had heard that Mike Crawford, the same individual that we think had the unedited tape and yet still decided it was a great move to smear a victim of domestic violence. That prior to, it was either right before or right after he left for a while there, he, talking about cult of personality, he started using like Aiden's catchphrases. And that, if that doesn't make you think cult, I mean, holy shit.
Oh, that was so weird to see him on stream saying those words. I know the phrases you're talking about. That was very
weird, right?
Odd.
Very odd.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, again, more evidence of, like you said, the cult of personality. And it's bizarre because it seems like, well, I think this is the difference when they talk about our side, your side. It's like, it's not a side. It's just that some people don't think that a murder case should be, we should be investigating and solving it on the internet, right?
Right.
We think that actual evidence should be preserved for real cases because it one, maybe you respect law and order, or at the very least, you respect the human beings involved in the crimes, the victims of those crimes, right? And maybe some people care more about other people and the victims more than they care about what they can put up on their channel, what they can show their audience, what they can use to milk it for a couple bucks. That's the two sides. There isn't an our side, your side. It's just
Right.
there's moral and there's immoral.
And my heart really aches. Oh, he lives here. He lives here. Sorry, hold on.
No
I have
worries.
my brother's dog till tomorrow, and every time someone walks in my house, even though I live here, she's like barking at him. So I mean, I can't even imagine.
It's got good timing.
Yeah. Can I talk or? All right. It bothers me to think about how all this speculation and baseless conspiracy theories affects the family that has to sit there and observe it, right? Because like you're talking about a
Very
real
much
person,
so.
a
Yes,
real victim,
real
right?
people.
Right.
Real people. And then
Well,
if you interview these folks or ever talk to these folks, any one of them, you know they're real before you would speak with them, of course, right? But you can't deny that when you see the lies and you see the sick conspiracies that harm them out there, that you don't feel it on another level, like to see people get terrorized like that. It's something else.
Well,
Good
it's the
people.
good, exactly. It's the dehumanization of these human beings that really gets to me. Even if you don't see them in court, even if you have never met them, if you realize that you're engaging with a weaponized caricature, and
Yeah.
you actually have an epiphany about what that would be like if it happened to you, and maybe it's easier to relate to it if you've been traumatized in that way before. You will very
Mhm.
quickly understand how you can be stripped of that humanity by these caricatures that occur in the public sphere. But what makes this different is these are involuntary public figures taking part in a criminal process, which rightfully, under the Constitution of the United States, is permitted to insulate itself. Read Adderley v. Florida, if you don't believe me, from exactly what has been occurring to these witnesses and victims. And that's why I wanted to bring this maybe to the witness intimidation statute, because we were talking about intent earlier. You don't need intent under the witness intimidation statute. It is a recklessness standard for what happens to those victims. And the criminal exposure, again, speaking in a lay, hypothetical, general context, to people who do this to victims is so high that the only question is, and witnesses, are you going to be charged by the state? Not will you.
Mm.
It's just a discretionary matter if you're engaging in this behavior. And there are a laundry list of people. I think we could list hundreds of people who have criminal exposure in the context of all of this. It's just a matter of when or if.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, the list grows and grows every
and it's a
day.
terrible. And yes, somebody asked about. I do still have my Christmas tree up. I'm embarrassed about it, but I do. It's been an interesting month for me. So whatever. But it's a machine that kind of feeds on itself, right? So like they go after the core witnesses, in this case, potential witnesses, anyone who, has a story that doesn't match up with whatever iteration of Karen Reed's story we're going with this week, right? And then it starts to grow. So there was a woman named Natalie who was friends with Karen, and it was, somewhat involved in sort of the beginnings of this. And she ended up later on, cooperating with the police. It's known now. And she, probably definitely helped tie together the fact that like, this is not just Aiden Carney and the turtle tank. This is Karen Reed pulling the strings, right? So the reaction to that Aiden has, I'm sure directed by Karen, was more witness intimidation. And they smeared this woman and said the most ridiculous things about her, that she's crazy. She is not, that she's vindictive. She is definitely not. I've gotten to know her. She's a lovely woman. She has her shit together. She runs a business. They went after her children and claimed that she was neglecting her and abusing her children, which is insane. The woman employs a nanny. You know, you can't
Mhm.
get less neglectful than that. Like, you know, she's not only taking her own time to care for her children, she's outsourcing it when she works, you know.
Yeah.
Craziness, absolute craziness. And I've heard her on the phone, you know, when I've been on the phone with her, when she interacts with her nanny, she's very good to her nanny even, you know. But that's what happens is, you know, every time that there's something that someone that stands up and says, actually, I have information that contradicts this insane conspiracy theory and points to a conspiracy between Karen Read, Aidan Carney, and their consorts, they get swallowed into this machine, and now they're being terrorized, smeared, defamed as well.
Well, it's PR, right? And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, because I think what's underlying, and let me contextualize this a little bit. So my background is in discourse theory. So I study the way that propaganda permeates through post-industrial societies. In particular, I deconstruct like the work of Edward Bernays, who was Freud's nephew, who weaponized mass psychology. The very first example of this was Torches of Freedom,
The
where
cigarettes,
women,
yes.
exactly,
Yes,
women
yes.
weren't really able to. Women could smoke. You know, by the way, have you ever seen old pictures where women are holding long plastic tubes with cigarettes in them? Did you ever?
Mhm.
That's not a
Yes.
fashion accessory. It was unsociable for women to touch the cigarette. So they would wear gloves and have a long plastic tube so they wouldn't have to touch it. And then by the time the 1920s came around, cigarette companies go to Edward Bernays and say, well, can you have women use cigarettes as their torches of freedom in the Thanksgiving Day parade to represent women's liberation? And all of a sudden, more of the country started smoking, profits went up. So I study how this works. And I, from the beginning of this case, was very interested in how this PR apparatus works. But Kate, I think the $1 million question here is, what if Karen Read's team and Turtleboy had independent connections to Rachel Rollins before they intersected, they being Turtleboy and Karen Read's team?
Well, it looks like they may have. That is a subject that I'm not entirely comfortable broaching, because I am with you on, I feel like this you know, the sort of the side plot with this completely non-productive FBI probe is suspicious, and not for the reasons that the turtle cult thinks. And I am privy to some information from different sources that would definitely corroborate that it's fishy. However, again, sometimes I come across information that I think in the immediate is better served passed over to the authorities than smeared across social media. And that's where I'm at with that right now. I have some context. I don't even know what I can say. I don't know if I would say that it was Rachel Rollins at this point. That's about all that I can say. I don't know, though. I'm not, you know, I get bits and pieces from different places, and I don't have the same resources that the local or state police have. I just don't. So I could sit here and speculate all day, but I don't have all the answers. And I'm going to at least give the authorities the opportunity and the trust to connect the dots. And, you know, if I come across anything else, that's where my information is going right now. What I can say is that I know that David Yannetti was on Rachel Rollins' transition team when she was Suffolk County DA. And I know that Aidan Carney has openly admitted that he was being weaponized against Kennedy, you know, by Rachel Rollins. So there were independent connections beforehand. I think that's all I can say right now. There's some funny stuff. I'm happy to talk to you privately and kind of show you, you know, I'm sure that you've heard some of it, because I know that you talk to some of the same people that I do. They're from May of 2023 to the present, there have been several very concerning incidents surrounding this with different people, even independent of the Karen Read case, that I think would definitely raise some eyebrows and definitely have. But I'm going to let the authorities sort that out and see what comes out in the court record.
Yeah, and without getting into the content at all, other than one other thing that was on the public record, is that I believe Kearney and Rachel Rollins had contacts also because of Monica Cannon Grant. But without getting into the content at all, the reason I really wanted to bring it up is you had asked earlier a very insightful question, which is why is this weaponized conspiracy happening, or the weaponization of the public discourse surrounding it? And I have a theory about that. I think it's a form of sort of preemptive weaponization of the Overton window, which is the range of acceptable topics about acceptable discourse about a given topic in the public sphere. I think it's a preemptive weaponization of the Overton window in form, because what's actually going on is what we're talking about here, that there is a conspiracy here, but it is much more involving the PR apparatus and the weaponization of political vendettas in the context of the Karen Read case, but having nothing to do with the outcome of it, which I think is the most frustrating part. Because justice for, of course, what is central to why all of this started, which was a man dying, a Boston police officer, John O'Keefe dying, has gotten completely lost in this outrageous, in my opinion, defense PR strategy. And I find it insulting to the integrity of the legal process, and it makes me angry.
I agree. I've said that this is an assault on the justice system. Like, there is no greater right that we have as American citizens than the right to the free trial, right to a fair trial, right? Anything else outside of that becomes moot if our justice system isn't impartial, fair, and balanced, right? And that's both on the defense side and the prosecution side, right? Like, defendants have rights, victims have rights, and the court should be impartial. When we start playing these games with this PR machine, and essentially operating like the mob, a lot of this witness intimidation you would think you would see in a movie like The Godfather, coming around going, this could all end if you just do the right thing and come clean. Like, that's literal mob tactics, and they're employing it. And, in the background, and I'm going to say this, and I have faith that this is going to be proven through the court system at some point as well. You've got Karen Read pulling all the strings, directing this, and seal clapping over it. She knows what's happening. This is to her benefit and no one else's. And there are so many lives that have been adversely affected by these games, right? It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable from the standpoint of just basic victims' rights and protection. It's unacceptable as far as the integrity of the justice system goes. You cannot purchase justice, right? That's the one place when you step into a courtroom that your socioeconomic status should have no pull one way or the other, which means that the poor should not be treated worse than the rich and vice versa, right? Like, whatever your social media following is or who's your friend, none of this should matter. Justice is blind. And in this case, Karen Read, through her defense team, because I know they're involved, and through Aidan Carney, is really trying to, fix the house, so to speak. You know what I mean? And that's not okay.
Don't you think this imposes a duty on the Supreme Court of the United States to make some kind of indirect statement regarding the integrity of the legal process in the context of maybe what is a larger national weaponization of the public forum to undermine the integrity of the jury pool?
Well, what form would that take?
Right.
I could think of lots of forms that it would take.
I mean, I'm looking at what Morrissey did, and I'm seeing that didn't have the reception I'm sure that he anticipated. No. I have faith that if you question the integrity of the system, it's going to protect itself. But I mean, at this point, it's like, what's a statement going to do with it? Let it play out. Let it play out.
I'm talking about a ruling. We need an actual court ruling in the context of a very high-profile case. It may not even be this case. I'm talking about maybe a bigger. Yeah, maybe like, I don't know, something out of like the DC circuit or something related to criminal charges, just being hypothetical. You need a really good case to make a statement about why you don't mess with judges in the court system.
Right.
Now, will this SCOTUS do it? I don't think Thomas or Alito would do it. But, I don't know. I could see the chief and maybe Gorsuch or Kavanaugh feeling a little bit sympathetic. I don't know. I'm interested.
I mean, I've seen you said the treatment of judges in particular, and that kind of sparked me too. There was an individual that I followed for a while. I wouldn't call him he wasn't really a First Amendment auditor. He was more of like a activist, like an anti-police, anti-government activist. And he's currently serving a prison sentence of 12 years, which is the majority of what's left of his natural life, because he stepped over the line with the judges. And I actually, I feel like the guy was railroaded. Eric Brandt was railroaded a little bit. I mean, shouldn't have done what he did, but 12 years is excessive. But I find what he did to be less egregious than what Karen Reed is doing, because I feel like to a certain extent, these judges, these public officials, like, they've signed up for a certain level of public scrutiny and all the caveats that can come with that, right? Witnesses that are just simply cooperating with the government as the justice system expects them to did not sign up for any of this. What did Jen McCabe do that morning to warrant this level of life-ruining harassment? She answered a call from her friend's niece, right? And then helped his girlfriend go look for him while she was in distress. That is what she did. And for that, she's gotten all of this. Okay. Judge Canone, who I think is she's been a very fair judge, very competent. I don't have anything against her personally, but she wanted to sit on that bench, right? So if she gets a little slack, okay. It's a lot less egregious to me than these innocent civilian witnesses.
Agreed. Yeah. And the kids, the children involved, how it's impacted them. Right. It's brutal. There's no other word for it. It's brutal. But I can say from what little I have seen, the examples of pure humanity, the good side of things has been, if there is a silver lining at all to seeing people in pain, it's seeing people in pain taking care of each other, you know, in whatever form that is, even well-wishing, anything. It's quite something.
Well, and it may just be that this case, and it's I think I've said this before, this case is a reflection of the modern American psyche in some ways, which is to say that our modern internet culture really doesn't understand anything except for immediate consequences for one's behavior. And our justice system, if you really understand it by its very nature, is a little bit conservative. And I don't mean that in the political sense. I mean that it literally is just archaic because it takes a long time for it to change. And so in that sense, I think what we're seeing is a clash here between that sort of internet world and then the real world and the justice system. And in some sense, what really I think frustrated me about these cases, the Turtleboy and Karen Reed case, when I first started following it, is it felt like the justice system was getting overwhelmed and being outplayed by this hodgepodge group of morons. And then over time, the justice system, I think, picked up on the fact that what it was really dealing with was the weaponization by way of what is in effect a RICO sort of conspiracy of those morons to undermine the integrity of the justice system. Unless, yes, I just called a lot of you morons. I'm sorry, but you shouldn't have done that to the witnesses. You're horrible people.
No, they are. They're very stupid people. I have to avoid Twitter for sometimes days at a time because I'm so sick of the circular arguments, as they always come back to a few very weak talking points, and they completely disregard the forensic evidence against this woman, her own statements and admissions, or the fact that she's changed her story, right? Like, those are all things that, and again, like, I mean, why am I even going to argue that to a certain point? Because it's going to get hashed out at trial, right? Like,
exactly. That's not the forum for it. That's right. That's what's so mind numbing. It's like, why are all these people spending all this time screaming and yelling and, at the very least screaming and yelling, at the worst at participating in harassment, just to pontificate over a trial that hasn't even started yet.
Right.
And this,
and I understand that. Oh, sorry.
No, this is just something I run into in every single part of my work. I do a lot of work in different spaces, like the cannabis regulatory space, the activism space, and whatever. And every time I come into it, and I do everything I do for free, and I'm just very principle based, and I just like what I do, and I care a lot about it, and I want to serve and help people. But every time I come into it, I find that the only people, except for with a few exceptions, who are involved in the setting of policy or trying to affect judicial decisions or legislative outcomes are these self-interested, money-driven artificial front groups. And every single time it requires someone coming in, whether it's like you, Kate, or whoever else, who's just this kind of like either ideologically driven but impartial arbiter or just completely impartial arbiter coming in and actually laying it out for there to be any semblance of understanding of what's going on. And I think what really upsets me about that is that it reflects this breakdown of a duty that used to be in place with people who kind of were involved in the public sphere, where they took the sanctity of what we were all talking about very seriously, and that ship has just completely sailed, and we're all suffering for it.
Right.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think that the ramifications of something like this could be really far-reaching for a long time, which concerns me.
It's a breakdown of public order. It's a breakdown of our democracy. I was talking about this on I broadcast regulatory hearings each month as like a public information service. If you like the Cannabis Control Commission, you can watch my coverage anytime, every month on the first Thursday or second Thursday. But I was talking about this earlier. When our founders were writing the documents that kind of defined this country, especially during the emergence of the early federal republic after Jefferson became president in 1801 and stuff, the Federalists were making this argument, especially if you read Madison's Federalist 10, that the only way the republic was going to survive in the face of this conflagration of moneyed factions that would arise to try to influence the lawmaking and judicial and regulatory process would be a variety of political parties. That ship has sailed, and the cogency of public discourse. The Federalist Papers were newspaper editorials in New York before they were serialized into a book. Our modern newspaper editorials are about like music. We are in very dire straits, and we're going to lose our form of government. Not just this, what's happening to the Turtleboy case. This is a symptom of a larger breakdown of our system of government, and it is going to get worse, and it can get worse.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I will be.
I was going to say, I think that's why it's so profoundly important to popularize these conversations, because I think that's the only way to get to that solution is to re-kickstart the public discourse.
Yeah, and I'm interested the way that the public discourse is going on this right now is fascinating to me because it's so tribalistic, right? I will say that I feel like the people who are of the opinion that Karen has some sort of criminal liability, and it varies too. There's kind of a spectrum. There's people who think that she murdered this man in cold blood. There's people that think that she maybe accidentally hit him and then failed to render aid. There's people that believe that she hit him and was completely oblivious until the morning. And you can kind of, it's hard to gauge someone's motive or their mindset with something like this. So I don't know. I am of the opinion that it was probably accidental and that at some point she probably could have rendered aid and didn't. We won't know until trial. We may never know, right? But I feel like the people that believe that she has some sort of criminal liability tend to be a little bit more open-minded and rational, and that it can exist on that spectrum that just simply does not exist if you believe that she's innocent. There's no gray area there. Everything becomes the victimization of Karen Reed, and she has absolutely no culpability. They won't even admit that she was drunk.
Right, and the vilification of everyone else.
Right.
Which is the worst thing about this. Yeah.
Well, you know what the worst thing the worst possible outcome, and I hate to say it, but I don't know, just have this gut feeling. The worst outcome is that she did it, and the cops did something, I don't want to cuss, but horrifically stupid to try to make sure that they got her. You see what I'm saying? And, so that's the worst possible outcome. Oh, my dear God. I thought about it the other day. I think I was on someone else's program talking about it. If that is the result of this, there's no way this poisonous tribalistic public sphere is going to be able to possibly comprehend the nuance to be able to parse through that. And it just terrifies me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I haven't seen anything that pops out to me as like, ooh, they scream about corruption and incompetence. I've read through every single available document at this point, which I believe is 165 total, more than that actually, because I've read the district case as well. Not that there's a lot there, but I don't see anything. But I'm also not an expert, and I do trust the jury and the judge and the system to a certain extent. I know it's not perfect. I'm just going to take a minute to acknowledge some of these super chats because I've been doing a terrible job. Nadia, my dear, thank you for the $19.99. Tom Castro, thank you for the $2. Artie has passed this time. I literally just dumped all of these court documents on Artie this morning. I organized them for him because I tried to be decent, but it's a lot. So I understand he needs to kind of get himself apprised. Nima, thank you. 18 months. Love to have you. One of my dear friends. Yes, this is our first stream of 2024, and Aiden is in jail. And usually... I don't usually, I remember when Abrams went to jail, or I don't usually celebrate that much because it's like jail is a terrible place. I have my own feelings about our jail system, especially when you kind of compare it globally. There's some deficits there, to put it lightly. So I don't necessarily think that it's like a joyous thing that this man is incarcerated. I think it's better for society in this case because he's a fucking menace. But, it doesn't affect my life whether he's in jail or not, honestly. And it's not a great place to be. James Clay, thank you for the $49.99. Why is Aiden in protective custody? It's an excellent question that I would love to address. Aiden is in protective custody because when Aiden was taken into custody, he cried like a baby, hysterically sobbing. He was put into medical.
That's not fair. He cried before he left.
Okay, whatever. Yeah. He cried a lot.
Then he cried some more.
We cried a lot. Yeah. Listen, say what you want about me. It's not like I've never been in cuffs before. You would never catch me crying over it. You're not going to die. Stop it. But anyway, so he cried. He went to medical, which I think is pretty commonplace, especially because he's a fucking basket case. So they got to put him in there. And at that point, from what I'm hearing, he requested protective custody and the jail agreed because he's such a piece of shit that they were concerned that either the guards or the prisoners or both were going to end up tuning him up, which I would be a proponent of. I believe that man needs to get his ass kicked one time. Don't kill him. Don't seriously injure him. Just show him what it's like to be on the business end of all those checks that your mouth is cashing, because he's never been hit in his life and, it shows. Mordred, thank you for being a member for 10 months. Kate should peacefully protest outside Rax's house. If I go to Ohio, it's going to be for the gathering of the Juggalos, not for Rax's house. I don't like to pull up on people's houses. Not that I never will, but it has to be special circumstances. And Cyrax's house is probably not one of them unless he invited me. But he's probably not going to do that. Even still, it's Ohio. Navy Girl, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Julie Carpenter, for the $9.99. B. Tim, thank you for the $5. The last hearing was the biggest disaster I've ever seen. I laughed so hard at how stupid he is. I'm going to earmark that and come back. Carrie, thank you for the $9.99. I appreciate that. I thank you. I got to smoke Grant up. That's my plan. So that's my joint money, unless you prefer blunts. Fly as usual. You're doing phenomenal work. So proud. Thank you, Scorpion Shade. I'm proud of you too. And Veronica Blair, thank you for the $49.99. She says, y'all, I'm so wrapped up in this. I'm proud of what you guys are doing. And Semolina is Courtney. No, Semolina she's just Semolina. I know people don't tend to like her online. She's very abrasive. I don't know what's going on with her. I will, like I said, take breaks from Twitter because it's consuming and annoying. And I come back to a million with notifications from her. It's the girl never gets off Twitter. Go outside, touch some grass.
Did you hear my nickname or how I described her?
What?
Oh, this is a great one. A banjo in a washing machine.
Yeah. That's accurate. Skip Tracer, thank you for the $10. Thank you for doing the stream, Kate and guests. I'm so happy to have Grant here. I admire you. I think you're a very intelligent person. With a lot of, I feel like we're congruent with our ideology to a certain extent. So I appreciate that. Masshole Major Tom, my love. Thank you for the $10. Thank you. If I were a conspiracy theorist, I'd swear that Bradle's incompetence is by design to preserve a possible mistrial appeal based on inadequate representation. I question, again, the line of questioning that he was leading Aiden down to, as I understand it, as I heard from Grant anyway, was confounding. I mean, it was just nothing but victim shaming, blaming, trying to embarrass her with her sexual activity. And then a lot of questions that were, the answers were very self-incriminating. He pretty much handed the prosecution their case on a silver platter against this guy. Why would you do that?
There's only one reason you would do that. And it ties into what we were talking about earlier. I can't understand why Bradel would, well, maybe I can understand. I think what that was an effort to get Ken Mello or the state to approach Kearney and Bradel, because the only way that Kearney's testimony, setting aside what he said about the victim, which I think was him grandstanding and being a jerk to that victim in retaliation, setting that aside, I think the other part of it, it wasn't just that Kearney was self-incriminating himself. I want to be clear. He didn't just get up there and completely expose himself to criminal liability, in my lay opinion, on the DV felonies and other stuff. What he did was throw Karen Reed under the bus. And he didn't do it in a way that, like, that information that he was saying, just so folks understand, he was up there saying things about how the grand jury was about him and Karen Reed and Karen Reed's brother. And he even said Joseph Levy's name. And the only reason you would do that, well, one is if you were trying to get the story out there, but two is if you were trying to get someone to approach you. And so this is what I think about all this. I think Mr. Kearney had the demeanor of someone who was being enabled or felt untouchable. And that makes sense based on the overlapping concentric social circles we were talking about earlier. Okay, but then I could also see a situation like, I don't know, between the 23rd and 26th of December, where Mr. Kearney may have been approached by someone who he thought was his friend, very powerful, who could protect him, and was like, no, you're done. I compared this to the situation with the Bevilacqua murder in The Sopranos, where when Big Puss, if you follow The Sopranos, you'll understand what I'm saying. So before Big Puss gets in a car accident and goes to the hospital, and the FBI kind of lets him off because he's an informant, but then he participates in a murder and they get very mad at him. I could see something like that happening in December. And then I could see Mr. Kearney being in a situation where he's like, wow, I am in way over my head. I was playing a game. I was maybe being played by people I didn't understand, which tends to happen when you mess around with the federal government. And in turn, my only way out of this may be to publicly bury Karen Reed. And if that's the case, what do you do? Well, you're in jail. You're apparently in protective custody. Your lawyer, who you don't know who you can trust, you go up on the stand and you completely throw yourself at the mercy of the only person in the world who might be able to help you. That would explain it, but it still is crazy. It is the most ridiculous, absurd strategy one can imagine, but it would explain it.
Yeah, or just incompetence. I don't know. Or maybe they are trying to, preserve an appeal based on inadequate representation. I don't know. I mean, it was confounding, some of that stuff. Yeah. And really just, I felt myself feeling frustrated with the judge too, that I've seen a lot of these hearings because I've done some volunteer work, and I've been the plaintiff in them. Unfortunately, I've been the defendant in some harassment hearings even. So I'm not a lawyer, but I'm versed in it. And usually these hearings last maybe 15, 30 minutes, 45. For this to go all day and turn into such a circus, I feel like was such an injustice to the victim that had to be drugged through that. Given that at the end of the day, she is the named victim in an active filed domestic violence, a domestic assault and battery case. You've met the burden right there. You have. There was enough probable cause to charge him, which is actually a higher burden than the civil restraining orders, right? So there's enough probable cause to charge him. She says that she's in fear. That's it. You met your burden, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
But it's kind of like the Houthis and America aren't fighting in Yemen right now. It's Iran and the Western world. Like, that wasn't an RO hearing between the victim and Aidan Kearney. That was a
proxy war,
proxy battle for sure.
Yeah.
It was unfortunate either way,
The victim should not have been put in that position. And Mr. Bradel, that hearing didn't have to be that way. So let's go back, setting aside that Mr. Kearney wanted to get information out about grand juries and Karen Reed, whatever. That hearing didn't have to be that way towards the victim. That
Right.
part of it was complete gratuitous attack.
Malicious. Yeah,
Right.
that was malicious.
And I mean, I question anyone, to his credit, even Alan Jackson, when representing Harvey Weinstein, did not treat the named victims in that case that way. So
the judge wouldn't let Bradel do it, though. So folks understand, I was in the courtroom, and part of what's happening is there's a few different ways a judge will intervene. One is on a prompted objection after a witness has started answering.
Right.
That cuts off the testimony. The judge will move to strike or allow it, etc. But sometimes you'll get an objection in the middle of a question. And there were multiple times sua sponte, which means on the judge's own accord, the judge jumped in and just stopped Bradel from doing what he was doing. And I'm not going to say details, but Mr. Bradel attempted to talk about patterns of sexual conduct, as I mentioned, that were so beyond the realm of social acceptability that they have been said in polite conversation outside a courtroom, they would have been inappropriate.
Right. But that, I mean, and he is his client to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Tonic and Sales says, thank you for the $2. Take down the Christmas tree in January. I know. Listen, I'm not going to give a sob story or anything else, but my family has experienced a little bit of a loss recently that kind of throws off kilter. So, Tracy Young, thank you for the $19.99, says LMAO. Aiden is always being set up. He seems to think he's in some sort of thriller movie. You can't make this shit up. Shake my head. I know. I mean, at some point, you have to take a little bit of personal accountability. And I say that as someone who's been on the wrong side of the criminal justice system myself. No convictions, right? I like to brag about that. But I mean, to avoid convictions, I've had to accept responsibility for some things, right? If you do something wrong, take responsibility for it. Both Aiden and Karen Reed exist in this space in their heads where they are completely absolved of any responsibility for anything that happens to them, and it's always some sort of plot from the external coming in, and they're the victim, and that's just simply not how life works. Aiden made a series of decisions that's led up to today, January 11th, 2024. He's sitting in jail because of the decisions that he made, and there is at least probable cause to believe that he has run afoul of the law in a pretty big way, right? And that's been every single time that this goes in front of a judge. It is being reaffirmed. There is probable cause to charge you. You have done something wrong. This is not acceptable, right? The people that persevere through that are the people that can understand that, accept it, internalize it, admit it, and then move on. Those are not the kind of people that we're dealing with here. They're just not. And it's malicious. Most of these crimes are rooted in malice. It's evil.
Yep.
I've learned a lesson in life, which is, maybe it's because I've helped help work on the cannabis statute and update and implement it. There are laws that are written by lay people. In Massachusetts, we have ballot petitions, so you can get laws written as a citizen. It takes a lot of work though, 75,000 signatures, and then you got to win the election on the ballot. But anyway, there are laws that are written by lawmakers, which tend to be good, but very functional and not really intelligent. Not that they're not intelligent. They're not as legally savvy, even if they're drafted and overseen by legislative council. But then you get laws that are written by lawyers or judges. And the witness intimidation law in Massachusetts, if folks have never read it, it's MGL 268.13b. I think 268.13a is obstruction and 268.13b is witness intimidation. It's not just witness intimidation. Folks should read that statute. It's witness, judge, criminal process, participant intimidation. It's this whole laid out statute. And it has a precising definition of the word harassment, which changes it from a 3 distinct incident standard to commit harassment to a single incident. And then it imposes this standard of culpability that, if applied, would basically screw anyone who's targeted with it. Only a judge or a lawyer or a team of them could have written that statute, and only people who are so dumb as to the law would be crazy enough to test its not only validity, but its application. And that's what we have here. That law is not to be messed around with. Just because there's been a lot of prosecutorial discretion in the past, maybe in deference to the Constitution. By the way, we should talk about how the people, the Canton Nine, two of them, were stupid enough, sorry, but you were, in my opinion, to challenge the constitutional validity of MGL 268-13B in federal court before they tried to hold a protest outside one of the Karen Reed witnesses / victims' businesses. And what did the federal judge say? Well, first, the federal judge said, this hasn't happened yet, and I'm not preemptively enjoining the police from enforcing this law. And second, by the way, this law stands up to constitutional scrutiny. Because all you're really saying when you say I have a First Amendment right to do something is that a law has to survive a strict scrutiny constitutional analysis, which means the state needs a narrowly tailored, compelling state interest in order to justify the law. And guess what? Under Cox and the progeny, which is Adderley v. Florida, you get the explicit statement that the state has a compelling state interest in insulating the judicial process, not just near a courthouse, but anywhere in the temporal or non-temporal space from attacks. And anyway, so they're screwed. They're screwed, and they're never getting out of it. Sorry.
Well, just so we're clear, though, they challenged that in federal court after they had held the protest, but before they had been summoned to potentially be charged. So they still haven't been charged as of right now. It's a clerk magistrate's hearing. And I think we discussed that before. My projection is that there will probably be probable cause for the picketing and parading statute, but not witness intimidation. I'm not a lawyer, not your lawyer, not even that smart, but that's what I think is going to happen. I just want to give a shout out real quick. Sorry, I'll come back to you, Sarah, to Snack Devil is the abuser. One of the most heinous people that I've seen on these platforms right now, especially towards the victim. Let me say this, Snack Devil, if your old man ever roughs you up, I'll tell you that you fucking deserve it. So how about that? I probably wouldn't, though, honestly. I probably would still feel bad for you anyway, but you're a bitch. Just I don't like you. Sarah Marie says, sorry I'm late. Here for you. Bradle's a snake and saw Aiden's funly and cartoon eyes fall out of his head and like a fat guy following the scent of a fresh hot pie. He landed at Turtle Rapist. Not sure exactly what that means. Thank you for the $10. I probably agree. I love this girl.
I think that was some wild snakes and ladders, I think is what was going on there.
Yeah. Jackie Joe 15. Thank you for the $10. And you're very welcome. Sully P777 says, is it a cult if I purchased a free Karen Reed shirt? No, but you got fleeced. How much is he selling those for? Like $25 a pop or something? It's outrageous. They're like $5 t-shirts. I don't even know what the brand is, but they're terrible. Funny story. When I left Turtleboy, we burned, like collectively, a bunch of us that walked away, we burned a bunch of his merchandise, and it's so cheap and chemical ridden that the fire was like multicolored when it went up. They smell, they're gross. He cheaps out. He's a fucking scam artist. Sully P says 777 for $9.99 says 63 days till Karen Reed trial. I just the family deserves some closure. I just hope that it's done when it's done, Tom Castro says he's in PC. Yes, he is. It's known as Punk City in many places. Yes, he is with his peers. He is with the sex offenders, the snitches, and the general people that can't be in general population. So that's where he belongs. He can't go to housing because he is he's a little creep. Matt Hurd says, thank you for the $5. Wait till Aiden goes to big boy prison. I think red Kool-Aid lipstick will suit him. He'll get sold for a Newport. I don't want the guy to get raped in jail. I
think somebody actually did the math on how much it would cost to keep him in Kool-Aid lipstick.
It was
for 40 years. Yeah.
That's the other thing too. His exposure as far as a potential sentence is he could in theory do more time than Karen Reed. Is it worth it? I don't know. I don't know, especially because he knows that she's guilty.
My opinion is this is a human being who will not avoid seeing the inside of a jail cell unless he has information that brings down the president of Iran or something.
Right. Yeah, just really a lot of misplaced passion there. And again, Tim Bradle told him about something that pretty concretely tells you what Karen Reed did. And so Aiden's aware of this. Not only did the victim witness this, but this guy named Richie Microdots did as well. So like that's another thing, this Microdots guy who is claiming that he's being paid by Alan Jackson. Whether or not that's true, like I'm sure they're gonna find out, but he's claiming it anyway. Like he knows the deal too. Like these people, like there's a layer to this where a lot of these inner circle Karen Reed people, they know that she's guilty. They know that she most likely hit this guy with her car. They're aware of it. They're willfully ignoring it because there's a financial incentive and there's obviously a ego incentive in this, and that's pretty fucking foul.
So what are we thinking about but just forfeit? Sorry, I hate to jump in, but I keep going back to this every time the word money comes up. I think of two things. One, it's fucking racketeering. Sorry, cussed. And two, forfeiture. Not only if they get criminally convicted, should part of their sentence be that any future profits from earnings from their crime go to the victims, there should be forfeiture of the money gained from the racketeer influence corrupt organization.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Jim Short said, where did he hide out between the offense and turning himself in? That's anyone's guess. I know that he wasn't at home because the Holden police were going by
Gentleman's shed.
Yeah. Maybe he was with Ernie. That's a possibility. I mean, I would guess that he probably like hid out at his parents' house because his parents are phenomenal human beings. The only reason I think that is because his father was at court, I guess, for his arraignment on the Dedham District Court matter. So it implied to me that perhaps his father drove him there, which would mean that he left his car at his father's house. And so I'm assuming maybe he hid out with his parents. And that's the thing too, is this whole conspiracy thing really starts to crumble when you look at how reasonable the prosecution has tried to be with this guy. They didn't want to go pick him up on Christmas, so they put up a bolo, but they didn't actively go out and look for him. You know what I mean? They didn't ask for bail at the Superior Court level because they trusted that he was not a flight risk. He obviously proved them wrong, but they're trying, right? Like, to say that they're out to get this guy, they've given him a lot of latitude. Yeah. Well, more than other people would get.
Going to his family would have actually been the first smart thing he did. I highly doubt he knows this, but they can't. I'm not giving this as legal advice. I just think I remember it. I'm pretty sure if you go a family member, like a parent, it can't be a sibling or an aunt or something, but a parent. Right. If you go to them, they can't then bring the parent in and make them testify against you. It's some kind of privilege.
Okay, yeah, just like a marital privilege, but for parents, that makes sense. Maybe Bradel told him that. Maybe Bradel is assisting him in the commission of some of these crimes. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. That's speculation.
Would Bradel do that? That sounds more like someone who drinks too much would do. I don't know.
I've heard that Bradel is a day drinker and he runs his fucking mouth. That's what I've heard.
Wow. Damn.
But that's a good question, Jim. I don't know. Thank you for the $4.99. Anonymous for $4.99. Thank you so much. Says, will you please understando a button? Thirsty Thursdays. I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. I don't understand though, but thank you. Danielle Bogdan, is that the real one? Says, what happened with Peter Espezi? He was a vocal Aiden Bradel supporter, but he seems to be critical of Bradel now. Well, as I understand, Peter's an actual criminal defense attorney, and I see him on Twitter. And although I feel like we probably don't agree on a lot of like political stuff, maybe some stuff, but not all of it. And I don't think he cares for me, which is fair. A lot of people don't. I find him to be pretty sharp. So I think that his professional integrity kind of drives him to point out that a lot of what Bradel's doing is, even from a layman's perspective, absolutely fucking foolish, right? And if that is the real Danielle, I hope you're doing well.
On Peter, he's a trained lawyer. We don't always agree, but he knows the process.
Right. He's a smart guy. Yeah. Very solid in his knowledge base. Ashley St. Angela, hello, darling. Thank you for the $5. Says, Kate, you have been all of the victims' rocks. Thank you. Without you, I may have failed against Aiden. Well, you had the truth on your side, darling. That's why you were found non guilty. And, you stood on your own power, and I respect that about you. I do, I tend to connect with the Aiden's victims because I understand exactly what they're going through. And I harbor a certain amount of guilt that I, at one point, engaged in this with Aiden. So, I mean, I feel very fortunate and blessed that I'm able to foster these relationships and that these people have been able to turn to me. And I feel best when I'm sort of in service to others, which I do quietly off of YouTube a lot of the time. So I'm not gonna belabor that, but I appreciate it just as much as you appreciate being on the receiving end. Red Meat Daily News, thank you for the $9.99, says, will the authorities investigate the interstate sextortion and identity fraud against LG? The best way to do that is to write into them and put some pressure on them. That's what I would say. He admitted to it. We knew it was his account the whole time, and I am fairly certain it's on his devices. Melissa Boomer of the Night, good to see you, my dear. Thank you for the $5, says, I am perplexed how LNC are now platforming him as a journalist. Big yikes. I don't know who LNC are.
Law and Crime. I'll send a message to them. I don't know. I do some work as a journalist from time to time, I guess. I'll try to talk to them about this.
I think that it's a salacious story and people are kind of connecting to that. I think a lot of people don't understand sort of the lore and the backstory with Turtleboy. And I mean, as far as from a legal standpoint, just about anything, you say you're a journalist, you're going to get treated like a journalist. I think there's a lot of confusion right now with Aiden's followers. So one of them actually said something to me today. They were trying to kind of cajole me into releasing this original recording where he wiretapped the victim. And I said, well, I can't do that. I gave it to the police because that's where it belongs. It's a crime to disseminate that. And they said, oh no, you're a journalist, which I've never said that I'm a journalist. I'm not. But it doesn't matter. It's not a protected class. Like whether I call myself a journalist or not, I still have to follow state, local, and federal laws. There's nothing that insulates you from that. If it's against the law, it's against the law, whether you have a blog, whether you work for the Boston Herald, or whether you're just some asshole walking down the street. You have to follow the laws. There's nothing that insulates you from that. And I think there's a lot of confusion about that within the turtle world because they believe that he has some sort of special protections because he calls himself an award-winning journalist. He does not. He still has to follow the law, as do I, as do we all.
Yeah, and let's talk about this from a bifurcated perspective. So there's two things going on here. The first is there's no reporter's privilege in Massachusetts. You're compelled, you're brought in, you are going to jail unless you tell them what you know. Now, in other states, there is such thing as a shield law. Now, it's becoming more common nationally, and what it does is it insulates journalists from being compelled to reveal their sources. We don't have that here. The other thing that what they're doing, this is very common for people who don't understand the law. They're conflating two very similar principles. They're conflating, and this is why I said bifurcate, they're conflating the constitutional principle of the First Amendment with this idea of a reporter's privilege. What the constitutional principle of the First Amendment says, there's a hierarchy of First Amendment values. They're all similar. They're all entitled to very similar levels of protection. But journalistic activity, what it means when you say that it's among the highest rung of First Amendment values is the court's going to give you an overly deferential amount of trust when analyzing claims in the context of very serious matters. But even then, and I want to point this out, that the judge in the Canton 9 ruling said this, and we said this earlier, even if you meet the First Amendment test, doesn't matter if you're a journalist, a public citizen, even if you assert a valid First Amendment claim, all you get is strict scrutiny. It is not an unlimited right. You are just getting a very high bar for whatever it is you're challenging. And these two things, reporter's privilege and having First Amendment rights, are two very different things.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, it's a little bit different when you're a criminal defendant too, because I understand some of the shield laws here are more it's to protect a journalist from revealing their sources if the court attempts to compel them to do so, usually in a civil context.
Or
sometimes
as a third-party witness in a criminal matter.
Right. I was going to say sometimes in a criminal context, but not when you're the defendant, right?
And you know what else that applies? When you have a legal privilege. You cannot say, I'm a lawyer, you're my client, let's go commit crimes. That's why Watergate happened. Right.
Yeah. So Sully has a question for you. Thank you for the $9.99. He says, Grant, are you smoking sativa or indica?
I just switched to a lemon OG indica that's 20.37% THCA.
Very nice. Anonymous says, how much to undo a button on your shirt? I wouldn't do that to you. You would want to pay me. Put it away, lady. ED209, thank you for the $2. Was oh no, Jake is fine. Jake is fine. Jake is still, yeah, he's good. I'd probably be like swinging from a bridge somewhere. It's Jake, not really, but that would be too much for me right now. James Clay, thank you for the $4.99. Asks, is Karen Reed too classy for Tito's? Grey Goose only. I've heard that she drinks Tito's. I don't know. You should ask her. All right. I'm trying to think if there was anything else we wanted to jump on. I know that we have some content. I'm trying to do more edited videos. That's what I like to do. They're very time consuming though. So I have an interest in Tibbs TV right now. Making no bones about that. I'm also very interested in, you had mentioned the Canton 9. There's a couple named Jenna and Nick Rocco. And I've taken an interest in them because I can see where they're being positioned right now. And I've heard some things and seen some screenshots and other things. So there might be a story there too with Jenna and Nick Rocco. And then, we've got some other orbiters. Who's that other fucking guy? The one that apparently abuses children and dogs.
Tom?
Children and dogs.
The weirdo with the beanie and the baby shirt.
I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on that. That sounds extremely specific.
There can only
He's
be
like one of those.
man.
He wears like these tiny, like shrunken shirts. He's way too old for the fucking
Holy
beanie and the
shit.
shirt. He's an idiot. Yeah, what the fuck is his name?
Oh, he sounds like an idiot. I mean, granted, yeah, man.
Grant, do you know who I'm talking about?
Well, now I'm afraid because what if this is some kind of game where we don't say this person's name and I just haven't been brought in on this game?
No, it's not, honestly.
Oh, okay. No, then I don't know who it is.
Oh, okay. The chat's got yes. That's Baby
okay.
Gap. That's Baby Gap.
Yeah, okay. I was like, wait a minute, man. Yes,
the Glarer.
yes.
Thank you. The Glarer. That fucking guy.
Yeah,
I'm
I've heard some pretty
curious about
wild
where
shit
he
there.
stands
Yeah.
with all this and like what his part is because he's really like another victim, shamer and blamer. What a piece of shit that guy is. But I got sent some documents a while ago, and I was like, at the time, and then I kind of look back at them now. So I mean, it looks like he may have a storied past too. It's which we all do to a certain extent, but there's a certain malice in that guy that I don't appreciate that very much.
There's so many like sub stories happening at the same time, right? Because as you can imagine, you've got these weird like hyper polarized, followers of a cult of personality, whatever you want to call it. They're intensely insane, silly, stupid,
right.
Frightening, and they share something in common, poor judgment and impulse control.
Yeah.
And it's like everybody's having, regardless of the age, it's like everyone's having a midlife crisis at the same time, and they're just trying out crime for the very first time. I
can't believe he called Alpha Fox Adam dumb. Like that is laughable. He's anything. Adam is anything but dumb. I
know who you're talking about now. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
why I haven't really watched his content very much. I know that he tagged me in something on Twitter. Was like, you are trying to dox me, and I was like, bro, I've had you dox for a while. I just don't fucking care about it. like honestly, I don't.
No.
But then I saw that he was really holding water for the whole and the domestic violence thing. I like hits me personally. It sort of drives everything I do, and that power imbalance just really bothers me. So I don't fucking like him either, honestly. Not that my opinion matters that much, but looking into
can we talk about how victims have no rights in the criminal process, and that's why it's incredibly important for people to realize that you're re-traumatizing people who already because of the way our criminal justice system. Okay, let's back up. When you're charged as a defendant in the criminal justice system, the victim is not a party to the case. It is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts versus you, the defendant. The victim is just a witness with no rights, maybe some rights if they're subject to like a Rule 17 motion to compel the production of a subpoena, maybe some rights if like they're disabled and they want to testify and you try to have them declared incompetent. They might have a right to challenge that incompetency declaration. You can see the case of Ruby McDonough from 2010 if you want to learn more about that from the SJC. But other than that, victims have no rights. Witnesses have no rights. And these human beings are being compelled in many times to take part in this process. And then they're being, because of the way the criminal justice system is set up, the defense can talk a lot before trial. It's just how it is. The prosecution can't. So these people who are completely unprotected are being absolutely brutalized because of compulsory participation in a
Yep.
process that any one of us at any time could be compelled to participate in. And that's what I wanted to get to. If you can't imagine what the shoe would be like to be put on the other foot, then perhaps, again, like the Sopranos line, maybe we'll be able to make that happen for you someday in the context of criminal charges.
It's a daunting system too, you know, and it's really tough. I really feel for it, particularly again in the context of domestic violence, because I've had to go through maybe one or two of those trials, and it's tough. You know, you can just hope that maybe a plea deal gets reached, or that you're going to get an attorney that's decent to you on the stand. They're usually not. I don't envy anybody in that position. And that's why a lot of women don't report these things. Men too. It's not just a women's issue, it's predominantly female, but there are men that are victims as well. And I don't want to take away from that. But because of, and you know, a lot of the time, particularly if you have injuries that were, you know, even if you don't, right, it's a hurdle to get over when it's your word against their word, right? And so the de facto defense a lot of the time is character attacks, which Aiden excels at, right? So like I really am very saddened by the turn of events on December 22nd, 2023 for this woman, because she did not deserve any of this. I think she was very brave in reporting it. I know that she didn't understand what she was reporting or what she was getting into, and what a terrible process this is with a terrible person. He will use these character attacks not only in the context of the trial, if it gets to that, but across social media as long as he's allowed. And she's got children at home. You know, she's got children that will also potentially be affected by this. And it's terrible that it's allowed to continue. And she doesn't have a lot of rights. She doesn't have a lot of protection in this. Yeah.
Did you see what happened today? Just right before we were going to go on, he put up a blog naming her. And in the comments, of course, was someone who called her the C word,
Yep.
and then threatened to brutalize her with a brick. That's what I want to get to, which is that Mr. Kearney himself does not have to make a direct threat of violence to induce what's called stochastic terrorism, and playing dumb and pretending like he does not recognize that the results of his behavior are not statistically predictable, they are statistically probable. And he is responsible for that violence. That is stochastic terrorism, and he should be held accountable, as well as the people who do it, even if they don't realize what they're doing. Even if they don't understand how they're being weaponized, until they're held accountable, until it smacks them in the face legally, quote unquote, in the form of charges, they will never get it. You must use this very aggressive form of holding people accountable. This is not a drug war mindset, by the way. We're talking about criminals who are hurting other human beings. I want to separate, by the way, when I talk, I'm not a proponent of weaponizing the justice system against people who are like using drugs or things like that. I'm talking about people who cause real harm. That's a very big difference.
Right. Crimes with actual victims, right? Not crimes because the government wants to regulate what you put in your body. I'm just going to make a point of this right now. Snack Devil is the abuser. You're a piece of shit. I'm done with your victim blaming and shaming. I don't usually do this, but I'm banning you. Get fucked. You can watch in silence. I'm so done with these people. You weren't there. Right? You're speculating on a situation that, if you look at the testimony, Aiden essentially admits to everything that woman put into her affidavit with the exception of saying, well, I didn't place hands on her. So he's essentially conceding everything that she said happened did happen. But the thing I'm being charged for, no, that didn't happen. Get fucked. Get fucked. Really, honestly. What does this woman have to gain in any of this? Is she, like, it's done nothing but tank her life right now. Like,
Yeah.
Constant fear, constant anxiety, constant heartache and drama. Nobody wants that, especially when you have children at home. Nobody wants that, except for maybe me a little bit. I like a little drama, but most people don't. Okay. She has nothing to gain in this at all and everything to lose. Get fucked. Honestly.
Well, it doesn't have to be this way either, which is the most frustrating part, because I think a lot of you out there.
Sorry.
I really like 1970s and 1980s territorial wrestling. Just really like Lance Russell and Jerry Lawler and Andy Kaufman, and I just really like it. But I am very well aware that it is fiction. And I think some of you out there are engaging in intentional suspension of disbelief because you think this is some kind of game, or it's like a very interesting soap opera and it gives you like endorphins when you wake up in the morning, and you need to break that spell. I cannot give you a come to Jesus moment by virtue of talking to you through a screen, but at a certain point you have to feel this sort of intrinsic tug, knowing that you're wrong, like that guilt that you're feeling and suppressing with whatever drugs or alcohol you're drinking. Like, that is not because like your life sucks. It's because you have a guilty conscience, because fundamentally and subconsciously you know you're doing something wrong. So my whole point of this is the victim does not have to suffer in this just because Mr. Kearney is an idiot, right? You all, in some regard, I'm talking about the half of you who are enabling this, maybe less now. You all are, because you're suspending your disbelief, victimizing and re-traumatizing this person for no reason. You get nothing out of this. The victim gets nothing out of this. You're being played as pawns in a larger game, and it is the stupidest, most contrived, pointless waste of your time that you could imagine. And you should really focus your efforts on things like, I don't know, assisting the homeless, helping vulnerable victims of domestic violence, getting attention on changes to laws like that ban revenge porn, which at least is happening as a silver lining in all of this. Do something productive, help the world, and save our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you for that. No, I'm serious. I mean, just, when your cause starts to revolve around just the constant brutalization of other people through whatever mechanism it is.
Other real people.
Real people. Yeah, then maybe it's not a good cause. Like, in order to, at this point, support Aidan Carney and Karen Reed in the way that they want to be supported, it requires you to actively harm other real people. That's not a good cause.
No,
it's not a good cause. Like, there are a million other causes where you are supporting people or ideas that does not involve actively going out to harm other people. Why did you choose this one? I don't understand. I don't understand what half these people get out of it. I mean, but that's why I think it's a cult. They're separating themselves from their hard-earned money. They're buying shitty T-shirts. They're standing out in the cold to intimidate and harass an alleged victim of domestic violence. And I'm only saying alleged to give that latitude to Aidan that he probably doesn't deserve, but that's the right thing to do. It is an allegation at this point. I have no reason to doubt her, and it's not because of my own personal bias. She is in command of the facts. Her story never changes. It's plausible. No. It's backed up by Aidan's own testimony as well as his own recording.
Not changed. No,
right.
That's one of the strongest factors for credibility for me, because I'm paranoid by nature. You know what I mean? Like, just kind of like, I don't know what, if I'm being told the truth or not. I'm a very hyperly vigilant person in that way. And the story never changed, not even a little bit.
Lisa, my dear. Okay, Lisa, let's talk about story changing and everything.
Oh man.
First of all, there was a bolo put out for him. He was aware of it. He told the police that he was going to turn himself in, and then he didn't. Okay, so I don't know if I would use the word fugitive per se, but he was definitely avoiding the police when he knew that they were out looking.
No, hold on. It wasn't just a bolo. It was a bolo with PC arrest. And Ken Yellow went on record with the Fall River Reporter saying that while he didn't send out the Massachusetts State Police to look for him, although that was within his power, that Kearney would have been picked up if he were spotted. So no, you're wrong, Lisa. Don't challenge people who know the facts better than you. Go away.
Beyond that, I'm gonna the word fugitive did not originate from me, so I'm gonna go ahead and so Aidan has people who are posting on his behalf on Twitter right now, because that's what you should be doing when you're in jail. So I'm going to read this out to you. This is after he got his ass handed to him in an 8-hour restraining order hearing where he drug his victim through the mud because he's a piece of shit, right? And I'm just going to go down to this. All right. No, this is not it. I'm sorry. This is not the right tweet. Let me go back and find it.
Oh, you think he was finally smart enough?
Here we go. This is it right here.
Oh, he actually left it up.
Yeah, he left it all up, right? Here it is right here. All right. Today was my 6-year-old son's first basketball game. It was something I've been looking forward to for a long time. I missed it because someone made a lie about me with no evidence. There was. I missed it because I asked questions to cop killers, peacefully protested, and exposed corruption. No, actually, he missed it because he committed a new offense while out on 16 bails, but like whatever. When my kids ask me where I am and say that they miss me, it's a reminder that this person and people who did this chose not only to hurt me, but to hurt them too. No, you chose to hurt your children. You're an absentee father. They're a statistic now. They have a father in jail. Good job, Aiden. They wanted to wish their dad a happy birthday and didn't understand why I couldn't return their messages. I was putting on an orange jumpsuit because you violated your bail. They wanted to know why I couldn't be there to open presents on Christmas. Daddy was a fugitive. He called himself a fugitive. Lisa, you ignorant slut. So that didn't come from me. That came from him. Like in text on his own account. Right. So we know it's originated from him. Right. I'm sure that there's messages that are going to show from the jail that he directed this if it comes to that. He's the one who called himself a fugitive. Right. So that wasn't me. I don't know if fugitive would be the right word that I would use, honestly. Just a coward avoiding the police.
There's a lot of
problem with dads in jail is that they should be at home with their children. Except if you're Aiden, you don't give a fuck about your children, honestly, just your own ego. So there's that.
Counterfactuals are so weird. Like, I'm so used to people playing devil's advocate as like an intellectual exercise. I hate people who play devil's advocate in bad faith or who engage in counterfactuals in this subversive way. And there's so much of that flies around. I have this incentive to go to, I feel this compulsion, not incentive, compulsion to go to every tweet where people engage in that subversive behavior and call people towels or mock them. And I do that sometimes.
Right. I mean, I'm going to play it, honestly. This is how much that this motherfucker cares about his children. Okay. So this was a video that was sent to the victim. I did not ask permission before I'm sharing it. So I hope that, sorry if you get mad, but she was trying to break up with him. Okay. So the victim is trying to break up with Aiden, which she was trying to do. She was trying to extrapolate herself from this relationship for about a month, unsuccessfully, because Aiden would do shit like this, either threaten her or what I'm about to show you now. So middle of the night, she's trying to break up with him, not answering her calls. Then all of a sudden he starts texting her saying, I can't live without you. I'm just going to kill myself. Where were his children for this? I don't know. Then he sends her this. Okay.
So I have no fucking clue where I am. I'm on a fucking road right now. But I just wanted to say goodbye and that I love you. That's all. That's all I really wanted to say to you. You have no idea the thoughts that go through my head. You have no fucking clue. I hear shit. I battle it fucking constantly. And I reached out to you tonight because I really thought you were fucking different. I really thought you were fucking different. I was really hoping you were fucking different. And you can't even fucking talk to me. But I just wanted to let you know that you made the last 2 months of my life worth living. And I just can't do it anymore. But I love you. I really do. And I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, that's him suicide baiting, right? So there's a couple things that are concerning about that. First of all, again, out of everything you can do with your day, making a suicide video and sending it to your girlfriend while your wife and kids are at home is not saying that you're putting your family first, right? Whatever. He states very clearly in that he hears voices. I don't know if he's telling the truth or not, but let's pretend that he is telling the truth. Like, you are not responsible for having mental illness, but you are responsible to manage it and treat it, right? So you cannot be caring for children at home home while you're hearing voices in your head untreated. That's actually like that meets the legal definition of neglect. And I mean, what's the Worcester DCF number?
Well, it's really an emperor wears no clothes moment. That's an unfortunate clip to listen to. Just a disclaimer: I lost a close friend who took his life on August 6th of 2019. I still miss him a lot. His name was Robin, but it's unfortunate to hear that. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah, and then listen, it's not true though, because he does that, sends her the video, leads her to believe that he's killed himself on the highway, and then 2 hours later pops up and is doing kissy faces in his living room, same sweatshirt on and everything, going, "I love you, Lindsay," like nothing ever happened. Because after that, she was trying to contact him because she thought he was going to die. That's emotional abuse. It's manipulation. It's coercion, and it's evil. And so for him to cry about, "Oh, I'm not with my kids right now," like, yeah, that sucks. I've had to be separated from my kids too because of my own fucking decisions, right? Like, you don't hear me blaming everybody else for that, right? Like, it sucks. But you're not showing that you cared about your kids in the first place because you're engaging in this tomfoolery instead, and possibly suffering from severe mental illness that causes auditory hallucinations. That's Aiden's account of it, not mine, that you're choosing not to treat. You'd rather go out and have affairs and do drugs. And I mean, and again, that meets the legal definition of neglect. That is 51A. That would be a 51A. You know, you cannot be hearing things and not treating it while you're responsible for little human lives. That is something that they would come take your kids away for.
But and I remembered what I got a little bit lost in the sort of emotional impact of listening to that.
Sorry,
No, but the emperor has no clothes moment. What I was referring to there was for folks who buy into this cult of personality or this image of this man. You can only imagine how devastating it is to peek behind the curtain because I mean, so I'm a little numb to it all. Like I report on war and stuff, so I've seen like videos of bodies, but and so when you do journalism, you tend to like get a peek behind the curtain all the time. But the way that you fall victim to PR is, you know, you build up these images of people and you don't see behind the curtain. So I had heard, you know, and I'd even seen some messages where Mr. Kearney had said, you know, "Oh, I build up this kind of, you know, image of myself. I can't show weakness." But it's very different, especially if you're a listener or a fan of his, to hear that audio. You can almost put yourself in their position. That is what the kind of thing that breaks the spell. As setting aside how unfortunate it is from a personal circumstance to have to go through something like that for Mr. Kearney, I feel a lot of sympathy for him in that regard. It just, if that were the side that he displayed to the world, he would become a victim of his own machine and circus and rabid fan base that he has built up. And he should think long and hard about that because he's victimized people who have very similar vulnerabilities.
But it's not real. And again, we see that here. And then several hours later, she receives this video.
And it's not the first time I've heard of him using that tactic. It's
on several different
times. No, yeah, that's.
And that little wink at the end, this is a guy that literally just said, "I'm going to kill myself. It's your fault. You won't talk to me." Right? Like, this is the end. Goodbye. I love you. And then several hours later, look at that little wink. It's ominous. Like nothing ever happened. That's sick. That's narcissistic abuse. It's fucking sick.
Doesn't the new Massachusetts law that just passed the House that I think some people are calling the Turtleboy Revenge Porn Banishment Act of 2024 that is now before the Senate, doesn't it ban both revenge porn and coercive control?
Yeah, which I mean, you know, my issue, people will say, "Well, you post." Yeah, I've posted some of his fucking jerk off faces. I don't feel bad about it. I would be lying if I said that I did. I'd like to be able to take the moral high ground. His fucking faces are weird. I find them amusing. So
you posted uncensored pictures of him naked or just his face?
just his face, maybe up to here, like nothing with any nudity or anything explicit have I ever posted.
Whereas he was doing what to his victims?
Right, full nudity, explicit. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not exactly apples to oranges, but it's still like, but my issue with the revenge porn comes down to the coercive nature of it, because very rarely are these things just done. It comes with Aiden, for instance. He threatens these women. He extorts them almost. Do what I want, or our intimate images and videos are going to go everywhere, right?
Or
That's
else.
the problem that I have with it, is that it becomes a mechanism for power and control, right? You don't hold things over someone's head like that. You just don't do that. So I'm most glad at the prospect of laws against coercive control, right? Because I am, as a survivor of domestic violence myself, very focused on your own agency, right? I live it every day in my life. I am 100% my own person. I refuse to bend or bow to the whims of others. There's nothing that you can say or do to me to change my mind and who I am as a person, because I lived a long time without that power. And that's, I think, what triggers me so much about Aiden and why I dislike it, is he lives his entire life with this horrible power imbalance. He uses people. He uses things like shame and fear and coercion to control other people in large groups even. I'm getting a lot of communications from people who were turtle riders or free Karen Reed people that are now coming over to me, and they just want to talk, and they don't feel safe to do so within the group because of this coercion and this control, right? And that to me is very disturbing. I don't like it. And I think that he's evil because of that, really. You don't get to just boss and bully people around all the time the way that he does.
Well, I think this is a pathology, and I have sympathy to the fact that someone could have oscillating periods of intense emotional agony and then kind of come down from them. But I also think one has to consider the possibility, or entertain the possibility, of a sociopathic or psychopathic pathology.
Mhm.
The sociopathic pathology, I think, I'm not an expert in this by any means, but I think the way that it manifests itself tends to be in things like coercive control, emotional blackmail, financial blackmail, weaponization. But the thing is, to do that, you must be, there's a scene in American Psycho, very interesting movie. I think folks who have seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's at the end of the movie in Paul Ryan's apartment, when Patrick Bateman walks in and meets that realtor who says, oh, did you see the listing in the Times? Yeah, there was no listing in the Times.
Right.
And Mr. Kearney, you are no American Psycho realtor.
No.
Not at all.
He's LARPing as a midlife crisis criminal. You don't get into crime late in life, man. And what are you doing? Yeah.
Right.
Whole lot of LARPing going on.
So I told Grant at the beginning of this, don't read the chat, but I do anyway, because I like the hate sustains me. I don't really not affected by it. There's nothing you can say. I read this one. Nicole Bavis. I love this girl, actually. I found her on Facebook of all places. Really great posts. Feisty lady, which I do appreciate. She says cults and conspiracies are dangerous. And I would agree. Yeah. I mean, there's a certain amount of cognitive dissonance and just like confirmation bias that goes into this. And at this point, like, I feel like if there, and I'm fairly confident that there is not evidence. So I'm not claiming that this exists. I don't think this is the case. But if there was a video of Karen Reed hitting this man with her car, they would immediately discredit it. Like, I mean, it defies logic. It absolutely does. It's dangerous. I mean, you can convince these people of anything.
Well, and there's a there's a yes, Mr. Wrestling too. I'm a big fan as well of everything that came out of Texas in that era, especially Bill Watts's I can't believe I'm forgetting the name, but he had this great promotion down there. Texas wrestling and the Louisiana territory as well was great. Anyway, sorry, you brought me on.
Do you know who's in my Discord server? Sorry, I'm going to pull you further out on this. You know, Val Venus is in our Discord server.
So Val Venus brings me right back to the halcyon days of 2000 through 2001, and that build up to the WrestleMania between The Rock and Stone Cold in April of 2001.
He's a fascinating person.
He's from Boston, isn't he?
No, he's from Canada.
No,
originally.
Perry Saturn is from Boston.
I don't know
And
wrestling.
Perry Saturn. Oh well,
I do
Perry
remember
Saturn
Perry
and Val
Saturn. I
Venus.
do.
They may have been a tag team at one point, actually.
Hello, ladies.
You know, we
That's,
have
I know
a,
you do that.
well, yeah, you know, we have a very famous wrestling school around here. Killer Kolowski. Actually, that's where China came from, and Triple H, I think, was there too. We've put out some wrestlers from the Boston area.
Cannibal Rick, I do not actually ever hide from Aiden. Yeah, he can continue to say that I abuse children until he's blue in the face. It will never make it true, right? Have I, got into a position where I couldn't care for them at one point? Yeah, he's in the same position too, I guess. All right. Sorry. Oh my God. Sorry. I'm okay. I got a little distracted by that one. Andy, other wonderful follow on Twitter, Andy Dufresne. Thank you. I like her. Thank you for the $19.99. Travis says, late to the party, but I'm here now. Love y'all. Love you too, Travis. Thank you for the $1.99. LA Baby is what distracted me. Sorry. Thank you for the $4.99. Says, I am Olivia. Merch is now officially available for purchase. Wish I was joking, but unfortunately, this is how far they've fallen. Anything to make a buck off of a dead police officer, right?
Yeah, there's no.
Can you imagine the effect that this is having on the children? Because he was raising two children, his sister's kids, who lost both of their parents, were adopted by their uncle, who they were quite fond of. They called him the Funkle, which I think is cute. They're Funkle, and they would call him JJ. They actually designed those Justice for JJ pins that these animals are shitting on all the time. The children designed that, so it's pretty fucked up. But I can't even imagine the impact that this is having on them. Not that any of these people care, but I do. William Glory Hole is the GOAT, just like Kate. Yes, we love Mr. Glory Hole here. We do.
Absolutely.
Good guy. Good young man. And Sailboat Wolf for $20. Thank you so much. Says thank you, Kate and Grant. No, thank you guys. A lot of the proceeds of the channel lately have been going to a lot of this outreach stuff that we can do, just so that you're aware. So I appreciate you guys a lot, because I haven't been streaming or producing a lot. So I've been going out of pocket a little bit just on, whatever these victims need, as well as, there's some other people coming out of the turtle cult that, had their own issues to begin with, particularly financially. We did a lot around Christmas time, making sure that people had gifts and stuff. So I really appreciate you guys for that. Right.
Also, I wanted to say there's a difference between a conspiracy and a theory about something. Like when you are going now, I think folks should understand that the origin of the term conspiracy theory comes right out of, and it's part of the public record because of the Church Committee, comes right out of the CIA in the 60s and 70s. So the notion of a conspiracy is not itself a theory. You have to do work. I investigate governmental conspiracies all the time. I track them down. I understand the standard of proof that I need to make my case, and I present it. I am not entitled to work backwards from the premise that I'm right, that there is government conspiracy, and there's far too much of that is going on just in the world in general. But what I think you said was very important, and what it made me think about was, it would be great if in our criminal justice system we had a punishment where people had to sit behind some kind of one-way mirror and just be forced to watch a Clockwork Orange style video of their victims' families living their lives, like just forced humanization. I think if that's where we're at, if that's what it takes to bring some of you into some semblance of respect and relationship to your fellow human beings, then so be it. I'm down for it. I don't care what you think. We'll take over the country by democratic means and then force you to become compassionate. Jesus would support it.
That's a little dystopian.
Can we integrate some tasing in that? I want some electrical current.
Even more dystopian.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus only used violence once. Do you know what it was?
No.
When he was chasing the money changers from the temple.
I'm not religious.
The overturning of the tables.
Yeah.
William, you've asked this question numerous times. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know who Mark Grossman is right now. I feel like the name is somewhat familiar, but not really. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry.
Are they a lawyer or something? I feel like I've heard of the Grossman law firm.
I don't know who that is. So I don't have a relationship with them. Anyway, on that note, we've been going for 2 hours. Thank you so much for your time. I know that you're a early riser. So if you haven't joined our Discord server yet, you could, people out there. It's a wretched hive of villainy or scum. I just want to name off some of the people in there right now. So we have Raining Corn Dogs in there, Tenfold Hate, Nut Bucket is in there, Bitch's Throat Punch. These are some of our fine citizens here. Pussy Licker's in there right now. Good old Pussy Liquor. Yeah, there's a lot of good people in there. I'm going for the weirder.
Salt of the earth.
Yeah, salt of the earth people. It's pretty gross in there most of the time. A disproportionate amount of bullying happens that I have very little control over because I believe in agency. So Chuck Stegall is in there too, though, and he's a real, he is our messiah.
He has powers over tornadoes?
He does, yeah. William, like I see these comments and they're like, I'm not going to fucking talk about somebody's medical history. All I'm going to do is point out that per Mr. Carney's own testimony, she took abortion pills, and you can't get those without a prescription that includes the confirmation of a pregnancy. So I wasn't there. I'm not in her uterus. I wasn't in her vagina at any point. I certainly didn't force Aiden to go in there with your grand conspiracy, but I have no reason to believe that she lied about it. She testified that she was not lying about it under oath. I believe her. And Aiden, although he tried to cast aspersions and doubt on that, certainly I've seen messages where he acknowledges the pregnancy, and certainly out of his own mouth, he witnessed her take abortion pills. She would not have them if they hadn't, it's nobody's business.
I think it was pretty clear who the judge believed as well. And let me be clear. I don't know if people understand what judges are like. Maybe it's just I watch so many trials. I really like Judge Middleton, by the way, from Three Rivers District Court in Michigan. And I really like that judge that presided over Kim Blandino's trial. I don't think people understand that what they are is they are like really informed observers of a baseball game who like understand, like as if like Amazon statistical projections were like showing in real time over their eyes as they're watching the field. Like these people are very, very intelligent, and when they're finders of fact. So the judge may, based on the standard in the 209 hearing, though it may be, the judge made a decision as a finding of fact. The judge clearly believed one person and didn't believe another. So no matter what you all say, it's very important to realize that in arena is where we hash out disputes of that nature. And in this situation, trying to argue against the person who won an extended restraining order for a year does not make any sense, because you are not the judge. And fundamentally, that's who made the call here.
Right. That's it. So I don't even know why I addressed that. It's just annoying. It's like, stop victim blaming. At the end of the day, whatever domestic disputes Aiden Carney has this week, it doesn't affect your fucking life anyway. Okay. So like why, if you don't have anything supportive and uplifting to say, like, why even just the fact that there was enough probable cause to charge him means that there is probable cause that this woman suffered. Don't make it worse. What do you want to make it worse? As much of a shitbag as I am, I don't kick people when they're like, go fuck yourselves. Anyway, if you want to continue this conversation, join the Discord. If you victim shame in there, you may get bounced, but I very rarely ban people. I just kick them. So I guess you could come back and try again. If you don't want to join our Discord, that's fine too. I literally don't benefit at all from you being there, but you can. All right. So on that note, I think I'm going to end this. I'm going to let our gracious guest get some rest, and I hope you'll come back someday, Grant.
Oh, yeah. Thanks very much for having me. And please, if you like either learning about South Lebanon, Yemen, the Cannabis Control Commission, or the Turtleboy and Karen Reed hearings, feel free to follow me at Grant Smith Ellis on any platform, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc.
I will definitely plug your Twitter because I think it's a good read. He's been very informative. He's a good reporter. I like Grant. All right, guys. Good night.
Good night. Oh, he had to bail real quick. Shit.